Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Meso Terracotta series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and as of an hour ago, the Sega Saturn has a new core. It has been updated, a lot of the regressions have been fixed, and some other problems in games that have been plaguing the core for months now have been buttoned up. So I'm going to go over some of the changes, talk about what they mean for you, and talk about Sega Saturn testing moving forward. But before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But SRG320 updated the Sega Saturn core today, right around 11 a.m., and it's about 12:05 currently. And one of the notes on the testing and one of the closed bug reports on GitHub was sprite work in Grandia. When you would get into the battle system, the sprites would go absolutely corrupt, and it really wasn't a very good look whatsoever. But now as we get into Grandia, it is looking much better all the way around the edges. You might still see a visual glitch here or there, and do be aware it takes absolutely forever to get into an actual fight in Grandia. This is one of the longest intros as far as Sega Saturn is concerned, in my opinion. Definitely worth playing, but it is one of those games that has a huge lead up. And you did see a few little clips there in the polygons, or more specifically quads, but even when you get into the game world, everything looks absolutely stunning now. It used to be that this game had a lot of graphical corruption all across the board, and every single time it has been updated, we've checked back in on it to see how it's doing. From the menus to the overworld, everything here just seems to look, feel, and play like Grandia. Got good audio as well, and it's a really fun world just to navigate around. Shows the Sega Saturn using both 3D as well as 2D at the same time, and it looks absolutely great. The one issue is actually trying to find a fight in this game. It does take a long time, but luckily on GitHub there are some save files that are going to bring you closer over to where the actual fights are going to occur. And if we take a peek here at the GitHub, you're going to see what the Grandia battle scenes looked like before. There's a lot of interlacing issues and corruptions in the sprites, and this is what they're going to look like today. I'm showing you the GitHub because do report bugs on GitHub, so SRG320 knows where they are. It's definitely going to help him fix them in the future, and if you do want that save file to get further into the game to see it for yourself, definitely download that there, add it to your saves folder under Saturn, and you're going to have different disparate saves that are going to get you past all of the massive cutscenes, because there's so many cutscenes in this game opening them up. I will say that they are absolutely spectacular, and they're definitely worth watching and working so well here on MiSTer FPGA, but this is the generation where sometimes you would sit through a lot of dialogue and a lot of cutscenes before you actually got into the game. So if you want to see the improvements for yourself, definitely use that save file. But speaking of improvements, we have them pretty much all the way across the board. Now moving over to Daytona USA, this game has been running really well for a long time, but it was pretty much that within the first 10 to 15 seconds, the audio would drop out and it would be gone until you reset the MiSTer core, and then even then it would drop out again. But there was still some occasional intermittent freezing issues on Daytona, and it seems like the newest core has 100% ironed all of this out. I'll give you that sound sample in just a little bit, but the performance here seems to be matching what I would expect out of a real Sega Saturn piece of hardware. Big thanks to Octane for sending this capture, and he crashed into the exact same wall that I always do. You have to slow down at that corner even though your impulse says keep your foot on the gas. But this has been a game we followed along with a lot on this testing series. Pretty much everyone who owned a Sega Saturn back in the day had a copy of Daytona USA for their Saturns. And while this game is in no way, shape, or form anywhere near as good as the Model 2 arcade original, this is what we had back in the day on Saturn to bring home, and it's such a great example to test. Now everything seems to be rock solid fluid, you're getting a good frame rate, you're getting the graphics you would expect out of this game, and if for some reason you've never played it, all of this pop-in is inherent to how the game worked on real hardware, so don't let that surprise you whatsoever. It just couldn't draw a very far distance. But if you see anything in the image whatsoever that you don't think looks correct, leave me a comment down below, because I depend on all of you guys' eyes to let me see what's going on here. But again, the big improvement on the most recent core update is better sound and more sound across a ton of different games. The Daytona USA soundtrack is so good you definitely want to hear it, and now you can, so listen, and I'll be right back. Sounds so good, but be aware I did have to lift the audio level by 10 decibels in Resolve because it's still one of the games that has quiet audio on the core. Now moving over to Magic Knight Ray Earth, this is another game that's seen improvements both on today's core and from a core a few days ago, about 4. And some of the improvements were going to be in the FMV side, but believe it or not, that threw up a flag and I was not able to show it to you, so we're going to just be talking about the actual in-game gameplay and about how many great experiences there are to have on Sega Saturn. And I also want to use this to give you guys a little bit of a quote-unquote warning. This is still a work in progress core, and some games on Sega Saturn, especially RPGs, can be multiple dozens of hours. Now just because you see something that looks near perfect here doesn't mean at hour 5, 10, 15, or 20 it's not going to come up with some sort of glitch or freeze that's going to keep you from completing the game. So maybe now's not exactly the time to start playing through everything unless you want to do it for testing. Of course, stuff like Daytona USA is going to be infinitely playable, and if it freezes you're only losing a few minutes, but something like this game here, you definitely want to just test it, see how it does, and report bugs. And again, I will leave a link to the GitHub below so you can do that bug reporting, because some of these games I would hate for you guys to get 10, 15 hours in and find out that there's a game breaking glitch somewhere in there, because pretty much everyone always does retest these, and once I know this game can be completed on the current core, I will give you a heads up in a new video. But again, it's another game that has seen improvement since the previous cores, and that is absolutely awesome. It's equally great that SRG 320 is now back on that faster update path now that he is in a different location. This is the third Sega Saturn core we've seen in the last 2 weeks, and that is absolutely awesome because things were pretty quiet from October all the way through to New Year's Eve into January. But if you want to check out another game that has improvements on the core, you can definitely do it here with Magic Knight Ray Earth. It's such a ton of fun. It's an awesome story, an awesome game. You can play it in English. It's got everything you want, and I can't wait to see some of the other games improve. Something like Shining Force still has issues. Before you ask me to test that again in the comments, we've already done it on Discord, and unfortunately that issue does still persist. But every single time there's a new core, SRG 320 has been putting up patch notes telling us what has been improved from the previous core, so it's been really easy lately to go in and test to see what is working, what isn't working, and what has improved. So those notes have been absolutely awesome to be having available. But again, if you're looking for another fun game to check out, this one definitely does work. Just remember, again, you might not want to get 100% into the game unless you want to leave me a comment and tell me if you've completed it so I can tell everyone else, and if you want to do that, I would be highly appreciative. But let's move over to another game that has seen improvements as well in the previous patch notes, and that's going to be Sonic Jam. More specifically, the 3D section of the game, which should have been something that was turned into a full game for Sega Saturn. It still breaks my heart we never got to see any real Sonic on Sega Saturn as far as 3D is concerned. The last time we showed this game, I don't even think there was grass on the ground, or maybe I did show a preview of that sometime last summer, but this has improved again from everything you see on the screen. This looks absolutely spectacular, and there are a lot of fixes in the menus in this game as well, with some real issues with interlacing, it seemed like, or some sort of other graphical corruption. It seems to be the same fix that fixed Grandia fixed some of the menus in Sonic Jam in the 3D area, so hopefully as more testing goes on we'll find more areas that has fixed it. But the last time I showed this to you it was also with no audio. Now it has it. Listen and I'll be right back. Just sounds absolutely perfect. If there's anything wrong with that audio, I cannot tell whatsoever, but leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. Now you'll see here in all of the museum areas, this just used to be corrupted on previous tests when we tried them last year, and whatever fixed the Grandia battle scene seems to also fix Sonic Jam, because they seem like they are very similar issues. But just running around in the 3D section of this game, if this was not real Sega Saturn footage, I would be hard pressed to tell if it wasn't me capturing it. And if you want to see retests or new tests from games I haven't covered or games I covered early last year, leave me a comment down below and tell me what those are. But as far as Sonic Jam is concerned, the 3D areas seem 100% accurate to real hardware, and that is absolutely awesome to see. Now moving on to the last game in our testing series for the new core, it's going to be Fighting Vipers. Now this game used to like to hitch, especially when you were attacking your opponent, and it is definitely improved, if not 100% perfect here. And I'll be showing footage from Dead or Alive in a new video coming next week probably that exhibits the same issue. But don't forget, Pepsi Man is in Fighting Vipers, making this the best fighting game ever to feature Pepsi Man. But now the performance in Fighting Vipers has just improved. It used to be that the frames would drop and the engine would slow down because it seems like the frame rate is tied to the physics engine, and if it's running slower than it should be, it'll slow the game down with it. Now when we play this game, you're not really seeing any of that hitching whatsoever. You might notice a tiny bit of it here or there, but it's another game that is 100% improved from previous cores, and that's kind of where this core is at now. It's either bug fixing or improving performance. Some games still seem to freeze and some games still seem to not want to load, but for the most part we're getting really good compatibility to at least get in game and play a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, X-Men vs Street Fighter, the game that I showed you in a previous testing video that froze, still freezes on the current core. Check that one out, as did Mario from the MiSTer Discords, and he found the exact same thing. But if you want to play Fighting Vipers today, it is definitely improved much more over previous cores, and it is also a really fun game to just pick up, play, and have a good time with. If you've never checked it out, definitely do so, and just be aware, Pepsi Man is in the Japanese version only, so I highly recommend you play that one, because who wouldn't want to play as Pepsi Man even if you lost here. And big thanks to Andy D for helping with some of the captures from this video. He was playing Pepsi Man and you can't hold it against him for losing. But it's so much fun to be able to follow along with all of these core updates, see what's happening in real time, and seeing how things improve as we go along. Fighting Vipers was a game that previously I would say wasn't exactly playable because those hitches and slowdowns would cause it to not be as much fun. Now what I'm getting here is an infinitely playable experience, and if you do see those interlacing lines, that's because this runs in the Saturn's high resolution mode on an interlaced format. If you were playing this on a CRT, it would have no issues, but when you do play it over HDMI, that is just inherently something that happens. So it's not an issue with the core, just how interlacing works as far as video trickery is concerned on CRT versus HDMI. But if you want to play Fighting Vipers today, you can 100% do so. But that's the current situation with the Sega Saturn core. We saw an update about an hour and a half ago as I closed the voiceover on this video out, and don't worry, next time the core updates, I will definitely do a new video, show you guys what is improved and where it's going next. And again, if there's tests you want to see on the channel and on these videos, just leave me a comment down below. Tell me what game you want me to check out. I'll try to make sure it ends up in the next testing video. But short of that, this is not on update all yet. It's still manual install, so if you're looking for the core, go over to Discord. But there's a new Saturn core and go play it. Bye bye.